It's good. Yeah. Hello. Okay, good. All right, here we are. Welcome to the December meeting of the Historic Conservation Commission. I'm Gary Lader, Chair of the HCC, and I would like to introduce the commission. Jeffrey Long to my left, our Historical Officer and Registry Architect. Um, Craig Evans, resident of the district to my left, Roger Hudak, resident. Mike Simonson to my far right, Chief Building Inspector, and Desiree Strasser, a resident of the Mount Airy District. Ordinance information is the purpose and intent of the City of Bethlehem to promote, enhance, and preserve historic resources and traditional community character for the education, cultural, economic, and general welfare of the public through the preservation, protection, and regulation of buildings in areas of historic interest or importance within the city, which have been determined to be of local, state, or national significance. The way the meeting will unfold is the applicants will be taken in order. In this case, I think we only have one applicant tonight. After identifying the project address and the presenters, our historic officer will provide a background on the building and any recommendations. At that time, the applicant will present their project and plan. The board will then address the project, allow public comment, and ultimately create a motion to approve as presented, approve with modifications, table the project with clear recommendations, or deny the project with reasons for the denial and changes or improvements which would result in a positive recommendation. For public comment, there is a 3-minute time limit, and comments must be specific to attributes of the building only. Speakers are to announce themselves with their name and address before speaking. The HCC is a recommending board, and the results of our meeting will be presented to City Council, and their vote will be binding. Please do not forget to secure your permit from the permit office on the first floor of City Hall before you begin your project. Above all, I remind everyone to conduct themselves in a civil manner and always use a civil tone. The commission is here to help you with your project. We are a group of volunteers who are dedicated to historic preservation and restoration of older buildings in Bethlehem and beyond. If any commission members have a conflict of interest with any of the applications on tonight's agenda, please come forth at this time. Any conflicts? No. I ask everyone to sign in. Sign-in sheet. Okay, great. Thank you. There is a 40. Well, okay. Okay. All right. With that, we can begin the meeting with 25 West 3rd Street for Arts Quest, and Cassie and Todd. Welcome back. Good to see you both.
Thank you.
The building description periods on defining features. Bethlehem City Council overruled HCC recommendation to deny approval for demolishing all 6 interconnected structures along Northampton Street between West 2nd Street and West 3rd Street that comprise the existing Banana Factory Arts and Education Center, so building descriptions are irrelevant for tonight's meeting. The proposed alterations, the applicant is returning for a review of design revisions to a previously approved redevelopment project to construct a new 5-story cultural center at the site of the current Banana Factory Arts Center. The guideline citations I used for my assessment included the Secretary of Interior Standards number 9. That specifically has to do with new additions, exterior alterations, or new construction. It says, quote, "They will not destroy historic materials, features, and spatial relationships that characterize the property. New work shall be differentiated from the old, but also compatible with the historic materials, features, size, scale, and proportion, as well as massing to protect the integrity of the property and its environment." I also reference the ordinance that Mr. Lader read at the beginning of tonight's meeting. My evaluation, the effect on the district, and recommendations. The applicant last presented to HCC on September the 19th, 2022, resulting in unanimous support of a motion for proposal to construct a new semi-detached 5-story steel frame structure with a flat roof, as well as mix of brick and metal panel siding stretching along the entire width of the site facing West 3rd Street and connected to a new semi-detached 1-story brick masonry ancillary structure with a flat roof facing Northampton Street. The main structure measures approximately 200 feet wide by 130 feet deep by 80 feet high while the secondary structure measures approximately 90 feet wide by 40 feet deep by 19.5 feet high. Immediately to the rear or the north of both structures is a plaza with green space, entrance to the main structure, and a service entrance for the secondary structure, while the north half of the site is dedicated to parking. The overall architectural elements and details also received support within that original motion. They included the following: a brick facade at the entry level and metal panel siding with vertical slits at the upper floor levels along the East 3rd Street facade. The uppermost floor level recesses 12 feet from the main facade along most portions of the building that faces West 3rd Street. The entry-level facade has an integrated storefronts, including including a granite panel apron across the entire facade. There are punched window openings at the upper floor levels, contemporary in style, with flat aluminum frames and no sills or lintels, but they align vertically, at least on the front or south facade. The select windows have vertical thin details. The main structure also includes large expanses of glass curtain wall for the facades at the eastern end of the main structure. Select facade locations include murals painted onto removable panels for occasional rotation of public art. So those were all kind of key components of the previous resolution that was sent to council for approval. At that time, the applicant agreed to reconsider the scale and proposed materials for the proposed rooftop canopy and consider potential use of a fabric awning or awnings at the entry-level storefronts. HCC encouraged the applicant to further develop the architectural details of the overall building by referencing the contributing buildings that had been approved for demolition by City Council. The applicant also agreed that subsequent certificate of appropriateness applications would include concepts for new exterior lighting as well as building signage. The current certificate of appropriateness application includes submission packets with 11 supplemental drawing sheets, and then we subsequently received the associated narrative. A comparison of the previous design proposal with the current drawing set, and I did this before we had the narrative, so I took some time to go back and forth between what we saw previously and what we were given, includes the design modifications seen today are limited to the rooftop canopy. Although encouraged by HCC to reconsider the scale and proposed materials of the canopy, the only obvious, at least to me, modification is a smaller canopy soffit depth. So when I look at the old drawing and the new drawing, I can't remember if the original soffit was dimensioned, but I believe these drawings show a dimension. And graphically, it looks previously to be about 24 inches. And it's now been reduced to, I think, around to 12 inches. That detailed change and a slight change in the overall arc of the canopy appears to be about a 2-foot differential from what you saw before. So as I stated in my assessment, we previously saw a building at its highest dimension at about 80 feet. And what I could tell based on the presented drawings, we're now looking at about 78 feet at the highest dimension. Beyond that detail and that height differential, I didn't discern any differences from the previous application. Perhaps in the discussion with the applicant, they might bring forth some other nuances or differences. As a reminder, the previous assessment included commentary that, quote, the proposed rooftop terrace at the east end of the main building with express steel structure and arched canopy with multicolored underside recalls the terrace at Arts Quest Center at Steel Stacks located further east in South Bethlehem. However, that structure is beyond the boundaries of the Historic Conservation District and was not required to adhere to the relevant design guidelines, while the current design is inappropriate due to the visible perception of that canopy from the street below, end quote. So that was a direct quote from the previous assessment of the 2-foot taller canopy that we saw. The previous HCC motion did not address the rooftop canopy. As I quoted in my assessment, you made some recommendations for consideration. So discussion of the current design proposal as amended from the original is warranted.
Okay, thank you. Well, Todd, go ahead. Tell us about today's.
Sure. Thanks, Gary. So Jeff's assessment is accurate. We're here to discuss the overhang on the 5th floor deck. We feel like that's kind of one last major detail and hurdle that we need to overcome prior to really trotting this out for our capital campaign. So it's important to resolve that.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry to drag everybody out tonight. I know we're the only item on the agenda, but last month I fell ill, so couldn't make it. So here we are. So thank you for taking the time tonight to consider this one item. So we did reduce the, well, let me back up. We did investigate other options for this canopy. We feel it's important to cover the deck to extend its use, in slightly inclement weather, whether that be a light rain or a hot day with a lot of sun. We feel it's important to have that space covered. We did start looking at other options. I think last time we were here, we talked about a less permanent structure. However, we quickly ran into what we felt were some dead ends along those lines because of the ongoing maintenance costs associated with replacement of fabric, replacement of awnings, and that's just not something that's favorable to this organization. So, in an effort to compromise and try and get something across the finish line, we did reduce the height and we reduced the profile of the existing or the previously designed permanent covering. So the profile that we had previously was I'll say about 30 inches deep. We did reduce that to about 12, as Jeff outlined, and we did bring the overall height of that down 2 feet. So it's now the building tops out at 78 feet instead of the previous 80 feet. So we were able to reduce the profile by pulling some of the steel out of it. So we do have some exposed steel below the canopy, which I think helps the aesthetic of it as well because it breaks it down somewhat, and it's now not as massive. Questions, comments?
It may just be a question of the rendering, but there's, if we're looking at page 6 and page 7 in contrast, the vertical columns in the center of that curtain wall appear to be a different texture in the new rendering versus the old rendering. Is that a change in the structure?
So that they have not, that element has not changed. It's always,
It just looks more coarse in the original or previous application than in this one. And I just wondered if that was.
oh yeah, you're well, yeah, I think Cassie's right. I think it's the resolution of the image. The one from the previous application, if you look at some of the cars, they're more pixelated.
More resolution.
But that has not changed from our previous applications, just to be clear.
Well, just in looking at it, it didn't appear to be quite the same. And I wanted to clarify that.
You have an outstanding eye for detail.
Been looking at this stuff for a long time.
Probably also just a rendering thing, but they're the two different heights of the columns on page 7 and 8. And I know we're not, I'm sorry, 8 and 9 from those columns in the back that are supposed to represent. I wasn't sure at first if the roof had come down, but it doesn't look like it has. It just seems, I don't know.
Those also were not revised. I think it could be a matter of the perspective view.
I thought so too, but it seemed like it was pretty close.
Yeah.
But I know it's not what we're talking about, but I just thought it.
Yeah, that's a good comment.
One other thing that I would bring up is that I recollect that in September, we might have talked about the orientation of that canopy facing north as opposed to east with its opening. And I was wondering if that had been examined at all.
Can you can you provide more detail?
I'm not quite sure how to describe what I'm thinking of, but the way this looks like it yawns towards Northampton Street, and I'm suggesting that there was a question as to whether it could have that same open feeling facing north as opposed to, the area to the east.
Yeah, I don't remember discussing that at the last meeting, but to address that briefly, my initial comments back are that we have a stairwell in the way of that. So that'd require some substantial reworking of the plan.
So even though you changed the, excuse me, the overhang height and the thickness, the materials didn't change from the original submission?
That's correct.
Gary, can you clarify for me where we might stand with respect to color in this canopy?
Well,
Because it's permanent material. as
Right.
opposed- It's not an applied, it may be an applied finish, but it's a so-called permanent color material as opposed to.
yeah, so Jeff can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's been my understanding that we don't typically consider color in our applications unless it's a permanent, unless it's part of the material, unless it's integral to the material. Did I say that the right way, Jeff?
Yeah, our design guidelines are not as strict as the North, the
Mhm.
HARB guidelines. Our guidelines don't say much about color at all, to be honest. The tradition is that manufacturer applied colors are identified so that they can be integrated into the motion, and so that the permit will reflect that, and so the inspector can cross-reference. It's just a matter of records. HCC can recommend color, and we do that a lot, especially with signage. We recommend they not
Right.
use bright
Well,
white,
that
for
and like
example.
with stucco and
So,
so on.
and traditionally, this commission has recommended colors found in nature rather than, say, neon colors. But again,
Right.
they're carefully formulated to be recommendations. If it's a paint, those typically don't even enter the resolution.
Mhm.
But if they can identify products with associated colors, I do try to capture those as best possible.
Right. So there you have it. It's kind of a nuanced approach that we have, like so many other things. So, I think what's really tough for us in these kind of projects too is, of course, I mean, we're not here to, in some ways, we're not here to judge the architectural design, except in the context of our design guidelines, right? So, I keep thinking about this. Well, it's a very contemporary building, and you came to us and you showed us how the lower floors, how the base of the building ties in with our design guidelines for storefronts, and how I guess the second, third, and fourth floor, you did some things with the massing and the rhythm of the windows, and I think we all feel that, yeah, that ties in somewhat with buildings in our district, and I think it's always, the operative word is always contributing buildings in our district. So now we have this monumental canopy on top of this building, and I totally understand why it's there. I totally understand, I think it's important design-wise because, you want to call attention to this important building, and you want to make it a great place for people to be. And I'm sure it's, I'm sure people are going to be excited to be up there. So I keep thinking, well, our job as a commission is to say, well, whether we find it appropriate or not appropriate. And I think the only criteria we have to work from is our design guidelines. It's not, hey, we think it's a cool building. Well, we all think it's a cool building, but if we follow our design guidelines, well, we're supposed to be looking at, well, how's this tie into the typical scale and massing? What else is around our district that has this this wing on it? And then, again, it is very monumental. It's 18 feet high about. It's like another story. I'm like, does it really have to be that tall to provide shelter? No, not at all. Is it the right height and the right massing? Right now, I feel like for us to really understand it better, like I'd like to see it in the context of everything else around it. Like what's it look like if you were further down the street? What's it look like if you were looking down at it from here in City Hall? Because, we had one of our contentious projects here was the Benner Building, and, we're all like, wow, look at that. It's really the massing of it. What happened? Right now we're being presented drawings. The first perspective shows the building as an isolated object. Some of the other ones show this big dark mass behind it, which is of a proposed building that may or may not happen. But in looking through all this, I don't really see anything that shows us how this will fit in with its existing context. And maybe part of what this is well, how's this a good neighbor? I guess maybe our decision here tonight is, well, if we're here to promote our design guidelines, how does it fit within our design guidelines? And can we make it fit within the design guidelines? Right now it's, not to repeat myself, but yeah, it's a monumental canopy. We only have perspectives of it from street level. The elevations, I feel, are descriptive, but again, don't tell the whole story. It also would be nice to see some of the context around it. Like, I have a feeling if we saw the Lehigh Pizza in the next block, it would look teeny tiny. So anyway, these are my comments and the thoughts swirling around in my head. And, I'm sort of hunting for what's the right way to move you forward on this.
So we did provide a view that included a little bit of the Lehigh Pizza in previous packets. I removed that from this packet for brevity because I felt like we maybe provided too much information in the past. Just there was a lot to go through. So I guess I took the wrong one out.
What I struggle with in terms of our guidelines and the proposal has to do with, this is a large building. It's a large canopy, and both of them are stretching the limits of our general context throughout the district. Not that it's not attractive or imaginative or maybe appropriate for the arts scene, but I'm struggling with the ability to make it integrate with some of the other things that we have in the area. And I'm not quite sure that the reductions are sufficient, but they do make a big difference. So just to let you know what I'm thinking and why. It's not a capricious approach to, a yay or nay. It is really what Gary was talking about. We do struggle to make sure that if this building's going to be around 100 years, which we all would hope it is, that its context at that point in time is that it was, an important part of the community. Continue to be. So that's our struggle on this side of the table.
I like it. As soon as I saw it, I said, yes. Even with the canopy, but I like the project. And I thought this would be a quick and easy meeting
Sorry, Roger.
because this thing just, I mean, there's a lot of work was put into it, and if it comes out the way it appears here, it's going to be fantastic. But that's just my opinion. But that's it.
So I think one of the things we always got to consider too when we make our motions is, if we do something that is unusual, and if we approve something that doesn't really meet our design guidelines, we're really opening the door for anyone who comes in following. So, what do we say to the next developer who comes in with a really big building and a really big canopy? I think somehow we have to have a good rationale when we approve something, and we have to consider what the implications are. Again, I think we have a really unusual district. On the one hand, we're trying to preserve and protect, all these beautiful, wonderful historic buildings, and yet it's very eclectic, and there's a lot of demand for new construction, and how do you get it to fit, and there's a lot of rationales we could use, I think.
Any of the canopy lighted?
We have not gotten to the point of considering the exterior lighting of the building. We will be back at a future meeting to discuss lighting and signage.
Mhm.
I think that the how light would play on the underside of that canopy, to me, would be a very significant
Mhm.
element of discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
From perhaps your standpoint, you might want it a lot brighter than we would want to call attention to it. I see two sides of a fence there, but
Yeah, I don't know that it would be brightly lit unless it was in use, though. I mean,
And if you look at the Arts Quest Center, there's a lot of down lighting on the Wind Creek deck. So what you want is that immediate lighting for the people that are on the deck. The last thing you want is bright light up there because you're interfering with what you want to see at night, which is the landscape.
okay.
So I think we're in complete agreement with that this is not a shining orb that we want
Okay.
at night. You want to see out. That's the point. It's more for safety as it's downlit. We have people out there.
Good point.
Todd, could this work if the height of it was more scaled to people rather than being monumental. I mean, what if it was, 10 feet high instead of, 18 feet high? I know the problem is it would take away from your ability to give it that presence you're looking for.
I think it would be a less comfortable space personally, or
Mhm.
I mean, that would feel more like the overhang at an awning at a country club or something
Yeah.
at that scale. Rather than I think what we're trying to successfully replicate, from the programmatic
Which we've had issues
pieces at
with
the other
in
campus.
other buildings with the so-called temporary awnings and so on.
And I would say if you look at page 10, and you see the side elevation of that building, that overhang does not,
It doesn't jut up anymore.
it doesn't jut up necessarily from that ceiling height for the rest of that
from the
floor,
roof height, right?
the roof height.
Yeah, the perspectives on some of the drawings.
It looks, right.
It
They
look like it's
do-
like
it do-
taken off.
It does from there, but 10, I think, shows you that real elevation.
Yeah.
And I think
Makes it feel
if,
less like.
Right.
really-
if you saw it from further back, it probably would not have the same presence it does in these images. So, per Gary's request, and, admittedly, some of these views that you see here were generated close up so that we didn't have to model a lot of the context further up the street. So,
Well, I've said several times, but seeing the building across the street is driving me crazy. Sorry.
I agree. It's a weird perspective to have that extra tall building there.
Yeah, especially when it's like a dark shadow. Um,
On page 10, is the faint dotted line above the awning what it was?
yes, correct.
oh, okay. I didn't notice that. Thanks.
Yeah, that's on both sets of elevations.
Okay.
And on page 2 and 3, is it the case that that top story, you'll still see that? Like there's on 2, you can sort of see a little bit of that top floor. but
So
on
that was our
3
previous design.
Okay.
We did pull that
The
back,
setback.
so you
Okay.
can't, page 3 is the accurate representation of that
Thanks.
story.
I think I missed one of the meetings where you guys were discussing it.
So really, the only piece you read from the street now is at the corner of Third and Northampton.
Okay.
Well, in terms of an architectural move, and I hate to talk that way, but I do kind of wonder, would it help you to lower the canopy a few feet and then the form of, is it the 5th floor? Pop through that canopy? Right now it looks like you're trying to integrate the roof of the canopy with the roof of the 5th floor. So I don't know. I am wondering maybe the bottom of the canopy should be the top of the window. But, in saying that, while I think it might reduce the mass of the building, I think, I'm still kind of stuck on how we make this fit with our design guidelines. So I don't know if that idea has any interest to you, Todd.
Yeah, I mean, part of it too is the proportions. When that becomes a very short, open space at the top of the building, it feels disproportionate to the rest of the facade. At least now, when it is about the same height as the brick base, you get a nicely proportioned base, middle, and top on that corner. I did look at lowering it. I looked at redesigning it. It started to become very fussy and complicated,
Mhm.
in other ways. And you know, a lot of the reason we're back here is to manage project costs. So,
Yeah.
you know, complication is
I guess
driving it in the wrong
I
direction.
I would ask if had any objection to correlating your view here with our design guidelines. I'm sure you're familiar with the design
Yes.
guidelines because
Yep.
you've had to deal with them.
Yep.
What's your take on how it fits?
Well, I mean, there's no precedence, obviously, on the or on south side for occupied roofs. So I'd have to go back and look at that. Yeah.
Well, there was at one time an occupied roof on the Wilbur Trust Building.
The
Oh, is that
Flatiron building.
the Flatiron? Yeah.
There was some sort of beer garden or something up there.
Oh, no, that's current, I think, isn't it?
No, there was, but
Oh, many
it
years ago.
was
Okay.
historically something
Okay.
up there. So I mean, it did exist.
That's outside the district though, too, right? That building's outside the district.
No, that's a contributing building, definitely.
Yeah, sure about that.
That's Seven Signs?
Well, I mean, I guess that's kind of adjacent to it, right?
Yeah, that whole.
Well, we've discussed it a pretty good deal. I think we need somebody to make a motion on it. Oh, is there a public comment?
Nope.
Thank you, Jeff. I don't think I'm hearing from us here tonight, real enthusiasm, except for Roger.
Yes,
Is that a motion, Roger?
that's a motion. I mean,
But, okay,
and I think of what's there now and looking at this, no comparison, no
Okay.
comparison. Yeah. I like the project. I like the presentation. I like the way it looks. I think it'll be a plus for the south side. I'd make a motion to move ahead with it if I could.
okay.
And
Of
I'd like
course
to
you
do
could.
that.
Are there any seconds?
Sorry, to clarify, does that motion mean as submitted?
Oh, thank you. Mhm.
I'm just asking, do you mean no commentary, just as submitted?
Yeah, I think that's what he said. You're saying as submitted.
Yeah, I
Okay.
submit it.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Do we have any seconds on this?
I'll second Roger's motion.
Okay. All right. Let's put it to a vote. Craig?
Aye.
Okay. Roger? I vote nay. Desiree?
I vote aye.
Mike?
Aye.
All right. Motion carries.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time and feedback.
We do appreciate the work you put into it.
Yes.
Yes, you see the lighting, the,
It's much better,
Signage comes out.
much better to battle this stuff out
No.
here before you get into bricks and mortar and
Absolutely.
three-dimensional things.
Yep.
Move
Agree
the pencil
completely.
around anywhere.
Agree completely.
All right, we'll see you in the new year. Have a
Okay.
good holiday.
Happy holidays to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Any seconds on approving the minutes?
Second?
Okay. Minutes approved.
Thank you.
Any old business?
Just as a reminder, our first meeting of the year includes elections, so I don't know if you've contemplated
And our
or
first meeting is the fourth
He's a huge fan.
Monday.
the January and February meetings are always the fourth Monday because of the various holidays.
Okay, okay, thank you for that.
That would be the January 23rd
Okay,
due to the president's,
Martin Luther King
look, is it Martin?
in January, right?
Yeah.
Must be in January, yeah, and February is President's Day, that's right,
Yes.
yes, thank you.
Sorry, also, for the next meeting, depending on, because I know it may turn into a lengthy discussion, I didn't want to bring it up today, but depending on the agenda length, I'm gonna start reintroducing and talking about the administrative approvals
Okay,
again.
right.
I'm gonna, I'll get that email out ahead of time,
Mhm.
we'll send it out with all the information, just so we can spark that discussion up again.
All right. Yeah, I guess with that, anything else? Should we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Well, wishing everyone happy holidays.
Thank you.
Happy
Everybody, happy
Hanukkah.
holidays.
Thanks. Happy holidays, everybody.